Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this session. This session is going to focus more on water resources and water scarcity in particular in this region, which complements all the discussions that have been going on the issue of utilities and services, water supply and sanitation. We're happy that you are with us. Hopefully more will come during the session, and please I would like now to give the floor to our co-chairs, Mr. Nabil Assaf, who is the director of the FAO country office in Jordan, and His Excellency Mr. Jihad Al-Mahamid. He is the Secretary General of the Ministry of Water and Irrigation here in Jordan. The floor is yours.
Okay, I think okay, we have to talk in Arabic in order to maximize the benefit. Okay, this talking. صباح الخير، الله يعطيكم العافية. يمكن احنا اليوم اتوقع يعني اول شيء بنشكر منظمة اكوا بصراحة على اتاحت لنا هاي الفرصة، يعني حتى نجمع الخبراء في اوقات صعيبة. بتعرفوا يعني سواء كانت بعد كورونا والله الحرب الآن التي تدور بين روسيا وأوكرانيا، لكن بصراحة يعني هي كانت فرصة أنه نجتمع مع هذه الخيرة من الخبراء في قطاع المياه. يمكن لا يخفى على أحد الوضع المائي سواء في منطقة البحر المتوسط أو في شمال أفريقيا أو بالعالم ككل، وتأثير التغيرات المناخية. بتعرفوا احنا عملية ندرة المياه، لما نقول ندرة احنا بنعززها بصراحة بكميات المياه المتجددة. لما نقول كميات مياه متجددة بنحكي الآن عن كميات أمطار. فالأردن يعني يمكن أكبر حالة دراسية في موضوع يعني أول شيء من حيث ندرة المصادر المائية التقليدية، وكذلك الموقع الجغرافي للأردن. يمكن كما تعرفون يمكن الأردن يقع ضمن المناطق الجافة وشبه الجافة، جعله من أكثر الدول التي تعاني في شح وفي الإجهادات في المصادر المائية التقليدية. يمكن الأردن كغيره من الدول المجاورة هناك تحديات، هناك عندنا مشاكل في قطاع المياه. يعني من أهم هذه المشاكل، يعني لو حاولنا نعمل ملخص لأهم المشاكل التي تواجه الأردن أو منطقة البحر المتوسط، احنا بصراحة في عندنا عدم التوازن في المتاح والمتوفر من المصادر المائية، لأنه معظم مصادرنا المائية تقليدية وفي عندنا هناك زيادة على الطلب. فبالتالي احنا من التحديات التي تؤدي إلى محدودية الاستثمارات وبالتالي إلى شح وندرة المصادر المائية هي عملية عدم التوازن أو الفجوة بين المتاح وبين الطلب على المياه. كذلك من أحد التحديات عندنا في عملية التغيرات المناخية. لما أقول تغيرات مناخية إذا أنا بحكي هون عملية التغذية الجوفية، أنا بحكي في عملية الضغط على المياه الجوفية، كذلك بحكي في عملية تحسين النوعية. فلما نحكي التغيرات المناخية ظهر هناك في تغيير في السلوك المطري مساحة ومكان. يعني الأردن مثلا من الدول التي ما كانت تعاني عنا من عملية إدارة الفيضانات، فأصبح في عنا تغيرات واضحة في السلوك المطري في بعض المناطق. يعني تيجي عندنا كميات في بعض المناطق لم تصل هذه الكميات في فترات قصيرة جدا، مما زاد عندنا الحمل أو التحديات أكثر. يعني غير شح المصادر المائية صرنا كمان نواجه في عملية كيف ندير الفيضانات. فظهرت عندنا أنشأنا وحدة بوزارة المياه والري تعنى بالجفاف وفي إدارة الفيضانات. بصراحة كذلك التغيرات المناخية هي تكرار سنوات الجفاف. عندنا الدراوت فريكونسي اللي بيصير في عندنا، كان زمان في عندنا بتلاحظوا انه يعني كل 3-4 سنين بيجي عندنا وتير، يعني سنة بتكون رطبة، لكن بسبب عملية تكرار سنوات الجفاف يعني جعل بصراحة ان زي نقول الدق ناقوس الخطر. كيف نجد مصادر مائية غير تقليدية حتى نخفف من ندرة المصادر المائية ومن شح هذه المصادر. كذلك هناك تحديات أخرى غير بما يتعلق بالتغيرات المناخية وكذلك الفجوة. كذلك في عندنا في عملية الاستخدامات، بتعرفوا احنا في هناك تنافس بين الاستخدامات، فاحنا في وزارة المياه والري يعني في عنا أولويات بصراحة. يعني احنا الأولويات نقوم بناء على هاي الأولويات نقوم بعملية توزيع الحصص المائية. فعندنا أولوية مثلا للشرب، أولوية للزراعة، في عندنا للسياحة، للصناعة، لكن هناك في تنافس بين القطاعات. جعلت هذا التنافس بين القطاعات بصير في عملية تسابق وعملية استثمار لهذه الموارد، بالأخص الموارد المائية الغير تقليدية. فاحنا بصراحة من خلال وزارة المياه كجهة ناظمة لقطاع المياه بنحاول الوازن بين كافة القطاعات، مع وجود قطاع الشرب او مياه الشرب هي الاولوية، يعني هي الخط الاحمر ممنوع نتجاوزه. فيعني هاي كذلك من احد التحديات، انه كل قطاع بده يزيد على حساب قطاع ثاني. كذلك احنا بتواجهنا بصراحة في عملية التعرفة. احنا مشكلتنا في الاردن انه كذلك انه التعرفة لا تغطي تكاليف التشغيل والصيانة، فهذا يزيد عبء عنا بصراحة على وزارة المياه والري. احنا بتعرفوا احنا الان بيجي واحد يقول لك ليش ما ترفع التعرفة؟ فعملية رفع التعرفة يعني شغلة مش سهلة، لانه بتعرف احنا الان بنحاول نعمل موائمة بين دخل المواطن وبين التعرفة، ففي عنا توجه لرفع التعرفة لكن بشكل تدريجي. لكن الوضع الحالي حاليا بصراحة في عنا فجوة بين تكاليف التشغيل والصيانة وبين الكلفة الحقيقية للمياه. يعني الأردن تقريبا بدعم قطاع المياه كل متر مكعب ندعمه 60%، يعني المواطن فقط يدفع 40% ونحن بندعمه بحوالي 60%. كذلك احنا من التحديات التي تواجه، بالاضافه بتزيد عندنا ندره المياه، عندنا النون ريفينيو ووتر. بصراحه احنا في عندنا نوعين من الفاقد. في عندنا كميه الفاقد على المستوى على الناشونال ليفل تصل عندنا 50%، لكن هاي قيمة الفاقد تتراوح من منطقة لمنطقة ومن محافظة لمحافظة، وكذلك بناء على نوع الفاقد. في عندنا نوعين، في عندنا الفاقد الفيزيائي وفي عندنا الفاقد الإداري. لكن بصراحة احنا لما نتعامل مع الفاقد دائما احنا بنحاول نعمل بالانس بين الفاقد الإداري وبين الفاقد الفيزيائي، بناخذ 50-50، لكن هو على أرض الواقع الفاقد الإداري يتجاوز 50%. فاحنا بشكل عام يعني في عندنا تحديات واضحة. زادت كذلك من ندرة المياه هي الفاقد وكيف يمكن السيطرة على الفاقد، لأنه احنا بصراحة عندنا الضخ في الأردن غير دائم. فيكون عندك الضخ غير دائم مش من السهل تسيطر، وين بصير في عندك اعتداءات على المصادر المائية. فكذلك هي من أحد التحديات. كذلك حاب أعول أنه بصراحة بتعرفوا يعني يمكن الوطن العربي 60% من المصادر المائية هي شيرنج أكوفرز أو شيرنج ووترز، فبالتالي الأردن ليس في منع عن الدول العربية، في عندنا أحواض مشتركة بين دول الجوار. لكن انبثقت هناك اتفاقيات ومعاهدات، لكن هاي المذكرات التفاهم أو الاتفاقيات لا بد من تحديثها حتى تتواءم مع التغيرات المناخية. بصراحة يمكن التولز التي استخدمت في عمل هذه الاتفاقيات أو مذكرة التفاهم كان ينقصها، بسموها الأدوات الحديثة، مثل الاستشعار عن بعد، أو من خلال مثلا نظم المعلومات الجغرافية، أو من خلال الماثماتيكال موديلينج، النماذج الرياضية العددية، كيف يمكن عملية إدارة الأحواض بطرق سليمة تنصف الأب ستريم والداون ستريم لأي حوض مشترك. فيعني هاي كذلك من أحد التحديات، أن الأردن لم يأخذ حقوقه المائية الكاملة بالأخص بالأحواض المشتركة. بصراحة كما تعلمون يعني احنا معظم المشاريع المائية عندنا فيها مشكلة، لأنها أول شيء مكلفة، لأنه التجمعات السكانية عندنا في منطقة والمصادر المائية في مناطق أخرى. كذلك يعني هذا زاد عبء، وعندنا في عملية كمان زاد تفاقمت ندرة المصادر المائية بسبب كلفة نقل المياه. فعندنا ما يزيد عن 50% من كلفة تشغيل المياه هي عبارة عن طاقة. فكذلك يعني هذا زاد العبء عندنا وزاد التحديات. ننقل المياه ما يزيد عن 400 كيلو حتى نغذي كافة المحافظات. كذلك بالإضافة إلى الكمية في عندنا مشكلة بالنوعية. احنا صح في عندنا مالتي أكوفرز، طبقات مائية، في عندنا مصادر مائية، لكن ما ننسى هناك في تلوث. التلوث يا اما بيكون ناتشورال من خلال عملية زيادة الأملاح والمواد المشعة داخل الطبقات العميقة، أو من خلال التلوث السطحي. فكذلك في عندنا بعض الحقول الآبار أوقفناها كاملة بسبب التلوث، بزيادة التركيز بالأخص المواد المشعة، وتركيز عندنا بعض الأملاح. وفي بعض المناطق اللي فيها سطح المي قريب في عندنا تلوث عالي شوي بالنيتريت. ففي عندنا تحدي بالإضافة إلى الكمي كذلك احنا بالنوعية. فاحنا حاولنا نعمل من خلال نظام اسمه نظام حماية المياه الجوفية، ومن خلال تعليمات حماية المياه الجوفية من التلوث قللنا من هذا التلوث بشكل يضمن استدامة الموارد المائية. بصراحة كذلك في عندنا، بتعرف الناس لحد الآن ما عندها وعي مائي كافي. يعني يمكن آخر سنتين أنا متأكد أنه يمكن نظرة الناس للمياه اختلفت، لأنه اللي بتجي مرة بالأسبوع أو مرتين بالأسبوع يعني حس أنه والله المياه غير متوفرة، لأنه في يعني عند الناس ثقافة أنه المياه موجودة والمياه التي تسقط كلها صالحة للشرب، وإحنا قاعدين على بحر من المياه. لكن هذا الصحيح غير صحيح، لأنه بربطوا عوامل كثير من ناحية هل هو مجدي اقتصاديا ولا غير مجدي، هل المياه صالحة للشرب أو غير صالحة للشرب، قديش كلفة نقل المياه. في عندك تحديات كثير، ليس كذلك الكمية، كذلك مربوط في شغلات ثانية من ناحية اقتصادية وكذلك من ناحية نوعية. يعني بصراحة يعني يمكن حاولنا دائما احنا بكل ملتقى نعمل، يعني هاي أهم التحديات التي تواجه قطاع المياه، مما يزيد عنا بصراحة الإجهاد على الاستخدام، ويزيد عنا ندرة المصادر المائية. فمن خلال وزارة المياه والري حاولنا نقلل ندرة المياه أو الإجهاد على المصادر المائية من خلال يعني تنفيذ مشاريع جديدة، من خلال عملية تحسين الشبكات المائية وتقليل الفاقد المائي، من خلال تعظيم الفائدة من استخدام المياه العادمة. يعتبر الأردن من الدول الرائدة بصراحة في استخدام المياه العادمة، بتصل نسبة ما يزيد عن 90% من المياه المعالجة بالأردن هي مياه مستخدمة لزراعات مقيدة. فإحنا بصراحة لو صحنا نعصر الهواء ما بنقول لا، يعني بالأردن يعني كل التولز الأدوات المتوفرة بنحاول نوفر مصادر مائية غير تقليدية. الآن حتى نخفف من ندرة المصادر المائية بالأردن يعني لابد من التوجه إلى المصادر المائية الغير تقليدية. فيمكن شوي راح أعول، مش راح أطول، أنا دقيقتين أحكي عن موضوع الناقل الوطني. إحنا كان في زمان عندنا مشروع الريد سي بروجكتس، لكن هذا المشروع الآن في يعني مات. هذا المشروع نقول المشروع الآن يعني مشروع ميت. الآن إحنا بصراحة سوف نقوم بتنفيذ مشروع حتى نخفف ندرة المصادر المائية، وحتى نحصل على هدفين: أول استدامة الموارد المائية وكذلك نوعية ثابتة مع الوقت. فالآن الحكومة الأردنية في توجه في عملية التحلية، فلا بد من الآن من نعول حتى نبعد عن تأثير التغيرات المناخية وتغيير الكميات، لا بد نعول على مصادر مائية ثابتة، فكان لا بد من التوجه إلى التحلية. فسوف نقوم بتنفيذ مشروع أكبر مشروع يمكن بالشرق الأوسط في تحلية المصادر المائية، في تحلية من خلال محطات معالجة من خلال البحر الأحمر، من خلال عملية تحلية مياه البحر. هذا المشروع سوف يوفر بحدود 300 مليون متر مكعب لكافة محافظات المملكة، وسوف تستخدم فقط المياه للشرب، فقط للشرب. كذلك من إيجابيات هذا المشروع سوف يخفف الضغط على المياه الجوفية. يعني راح نعمل زي ما بقولها ريكفري لبعض الأحواض التي صار فيها استنزاف بالكميات، أو حتى النوعية عندنا ساءت النوعية بسبب بسموها الاستخراج الجائر للمياه الجوفية. فبصراحة هذا المشروع أنا رئيس اللجنة التوجيهية لهذا المشروع. هذا المشروع الكلفة التقديرية بحدود 3 مليار دولار. إن شاء الله إحنا نهاية هذا الشهر سوف نقوم بفتح العروض الفنية. تقدم لهذا المشروع 14 ائتلاف عالمي، ترشح منهم 5 ائتلافات. إن شاء الله بنهاية هذا السنة سوف نقوم بالإغلاق المالي لهذا المشروع، وسوف ننفذ المشروع إن شاء الله في منتصف عام 2024. وإن شاء الله يا سيدي بوجوهك إن شاء الله، ونتفائل خيرا نشوف هذا المشروع على الواقع إن شاء الله. الله يعطيكم العافية وكل الشكر.
إن شاء الله. شكرا عطوفة الأمين العام لوزارة المياه والري. خليني أقدم نفسي، أنا اسمي نبيل عساف، ممثل منظمة الأغذية والزراعة الفاو في الأردن. بدي رحب بالبانلز اللي موجودين معي، بالإضافة لعطوفة الأمين العام دكتور جهاد محاميد. في معنا ماغنوس أندري، هو مدير البرنامج الإقليمي للبيئة وتغير المناخ بوكالة التعاون الدولي السويدي سيدا. في عنا سيد كيتكا كويول، مدير المياه والصرف الصحي والنظافة باليونيسف الأردن. في عنا بروفيسور عماد كرابلي، هو بروفيسور بجامعة الأردن. الذهبي غانمي، مين الذهبي غانمي موجود؟ مش مبين علي. سيد ذهبي غنمي مدير الري واستغلال المياه الفلاحية بوزارة الفلاحة والموارد المائية والصيد البحري بتونس. وفي عنا كمان اخونا الكبير سينيور لاند اند ووتر اوفيسر محمد الحمدي، برحب فيه، جاي من المكتب الاقليمي للفاو بالقاهرة. وفي عنا مدير مبادرة نظرة المياه وخبير المياه بالمكتب الاقليمي للشرق الادنى وشمال افريقيا. هشام، انت المدير كمان. وبرحب بزميلي هشام يلي اجى كمان من مكتب القاهرة، هو سبورتينج المبادرة، سبورتينج محمد الحمدي. انا ما بدي اطول عليكم كتير لانه ما خلينا شيء نقوله الدكتور جهاد. ولكن نحن اليوم اول شيء بدي اشكر المنظمين. المي يعني شو بدنا نقول هلا، عم نحتفل، مش عم نحتفل، عم نشوف الارب ووتر ويك. يعني يمكن نحن نكون هون او ما نكون هون بعد 30 سنة، يمكن يكون الارب ووتر مانس او ما تبقى من الووتر مانس، ما تبقى من الووتر، لانه مش بس المنطقة العربية ولكن كل العالم عم يتعامل مع المياه بشكل كتير منه منيح. وهذا مورد أساسي يلي هو في بعض الدول اللي عندها مية كتير عندها الهدر يا سيدي الكريم أكثر من 70% ببعض القطاعات. وبالتالي لما يكون كتير ما بيفكروا بالهدر، بس لما بنوصل على مناطق مثل مناطقنا يلي ما تبقى من المياه بدنا نديره بشكل أفضل تنقدر نستمر، بيكون في استمرار للحياة بمنطقتنا. هذا هو التحدي الكبير. وبالتالي كل القطاعات معنية وكلنا مسؤولون وكلنا معنيون. يعني أنا وقت اللي بشتري قنينة مي مثل هيدي فيها بلاستيك، هذا البلاستيك بيروح الله أعلم لوين، يمكن عم يروح على أعالي المحيطات. وأنا بدي هني الجميع وهني الدول أنه توصلت إلى اتفاقية معاهدة الأمم المتحدة لحماية أعالي المحيطات يلي تم التوصل لها امبارح من بعد جهد طويل وعناء طويل، لأنه هذه المحيطات هي اللي رح تكون الأنبوب اللي رح نسحب منها المي تا نشرب. وبعد 20-30 سنة رح يكون نادر انه نلاقي مي ما فيها بلاستيك بارتيكلز، ما فيها مواد تانية، ما فيها ما تبقى من الموليكولز للأدوية بشكل عام. وبالتالي هون التحدي الكبير، ونحن ما بدنا نرسم صورة سوداء ولكن بدنا نقول تما نوصل لهذه المرحلة. هون هو التحدي. من هيك معنا الخبراء اليوم تيحكوا أكثر وتنعمل هالديبيت، وبدي أشكركم. Let me say something in English. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, first I would like to express my sincere thanks to the organizers of the Arab Water Week for giving FAO the opportunity to organize this session on addressing water scarcity challenges for multiple perspectives in the Arab region. I also would like to thank my friend, His Excellency Dr. Al-Mahamid, Secretary General of the Ministry of Water and Irrigation in Jordan, for accepting to chair this session, and extend my thanks to our distinguished partners from SIDA, from UNICEF, for accepting to share their expertise and reflection on the subject. As we know, our region is facing a rapid increase in water stress, leading to major challenges that threaten sustainable development. Water scarcity is more pressing now than ever before. Rapid population growth and urbanization, climate change impacts, and limited financing pose serious threats to countries in the region to achieve sustainable development goals and maintain the basic rights of access to water and sanitation services. We view water scarcity to be a multidimensional challenge that needs coordinated and multi-sectoral response. Increased investments are needed to develop and sustainably manage water resources, enhance institutional and technical capacities, and improve the delivery of water services, particularly in countries suffering from protracted conflicts. Actions are required across sectors and across levels to include governments, institutions, and civil society at national and local levels. Evidence-based decision-making and policy coherence are of imperative importance to strengthen the resilience of the water-related sectors, and scaling up financing flows for water is critical to close the gap between availability and needed levels. In water-scarce conditions, improving water allocation arrangements is particularly critical, especially for the agricultural sector. As we know, with an average of 85%, agriculture is a major water-using sector, but will face pressure to reallocate water for other sectors like domestic and industries, viewed often of higher priority. Such allocation from agriculture will certainly affect farmers, especially smallholders, vulnerable farmers, with major impact on food security and the rural economy. To help our countries address the food and water security challenges, the FAO Regional Office for the Near East and North Africa and its partners established the Water Scarcity Initiative in 2013, 10 years ago. We had a Water Scarcity Initiative that started. The regional initiative was created on the premise that water and food security involve complex and overlapping multi-sector and multi-stakeholders forms of decision-making. The regional initiative provides partnership platform for strengthening collaboration among partners and member countries at the regional level while addressing national priorities and supporting countries in sharing experiences, promoting best practices and developing evidence-based policies in the area of water and food security. Ladies and gentlemen, in this session, we seek to reflect on technical and financial opportunities and challenges and recommend areas of collaboration towards more resilient future and the achievement of the water and related SDGs, sustainability, of course. Once again, I thank you for being with us today and look forward to your active participation and the discussion on these important topics, and thanks for your attention. شكرا جزيلا.
Thank you very much to our co-chairs for the introductory words. And as you know, water and water scarcity is very broad subject. And today we're trying to focus on certain elements of this scope. We're looking at financing, we're looking at wash services and their conflict situations, and we're looking at water allocation. And these are important elements of water management in total. So I'll try to be brief. I'm just trying to set the scene, tell you what the Water Scarcity Initiative is all about, and highlighting some of the activities that we are doing, and then we will listen more from our partners. Okay. So, as has been said, we know that water availability is declining in this region. Now we only have less than a quarter in terms of per capita share of renewable water in comparison to the 60s. And this is mainly due not to reduced precipitation or water availability, but because of population growth and increasing demands. 12 countries in this region are among the top 15 countries of highest level of water stress in the world. Here it says 8 out of 10, but it is 12 out of the 15. Because of the water scarcity, there is high dependency on irrigation for agriculture. And as has been said, more than 60% of the water comes from outside the region. Most groundwater aquifers are being depleted, so that is also an alarming process. So water scarcity is very connected to this region. It is characterized, this region is characterized by water scarcity. So the challenges, we could see that there is physical water scarcity, there is inefficient utilization of water in terms of low water efficiency, water productivity, be it in agriculture, be it in domestic water supply, etc. And there is also sustainability issues, especially with groundwater. There has been a lot done in this region, in the countries of this region, in terms of policies, legal frameworks, institutional improvements, etc. But we could see still that although much progress has been done, yet the policy directions are conflicting. We hear that the region wants to have self-sufficiency when it comes to food security from local production. Where is the water coming from? So they acknowledge the water scarcity. On the other hand, you see directions for calling for self-sufficiency or higher levels of self-sufficiency. They acknowledge the need to utilize treated wastewater in some countries up to tertiary levels, But yet, the laws and standards are very stringent not to allow for food production, the use of treated wastewater in food production. So there is that policy conflicting directions. The science policy interface is weak. The policies that come are not based on research, are not based on evidence. Mostly, I'm not saying entirely. The legal framework is challenged by enforcement. We have some of the best water laws, but they're not enforced on the ground because of the capacity to enforce those legislations and those legal frameworks. There is overlapping mandates when it comes to institutional setup. On the reuse of treated wastewater, who is responsible? You see the overlap between what ministries of environment, ministries of agriculture, ministries of water, agencies responsible for standards and specifications, etc. Technical capacity in general varies, and I can see that in Jordan maybe it is better than other countries, but on general it is weak. Technical capacity at the institutional level, at the individual level. Technology and innovation, there is slow and low investment in technology transfer. There is no enabling environment or weak enabling environment for innovation. So all of this makes it rather very complex to deal with. So Mr. Assaf has indicated that 10 years ago we initiated the Water Scarcity Initiative together with partners, and the aim there is to contribute to inclusive and sustainable development within this increasing water scarcity context. The focus areas of work that the initiative deals with is strengthened policy coherence in terms of coordination between water and agriculture, agriculture being the highest user of water resources. There is enhanced partnership, and I'll show how the initiative was launched. So there is increased enhanced partnership with all the partners. We see here that we are partnering with UNICEF. We have partners with all partnership agreements with all those working on water in the region. From outside the region, we have an interregional technical platform trying to learn from what they have and show what also we do. This is an online technical platform. It tries to get best practices, knowledge products, etc. There is an informed strategic water planning capacity building that we've done, and thanks to SIDA and thanks to the Swedish government, we've done this in 7 countries through what we call a WEPS project, Water Efficiency and Productivity program for the last 5-6 years, and we've enhanced capacities. Jordan is one of the countries benefited from this, Tunis as well. So we've built capacity on water accounting, water productivity, the nexus approach, etc. We also focus on non-conventional water. As you know, this is an important element to deal with. I'll go very quickly in some of the issues on issues related to policy coherence. We've supported the League of Arab States in institutionalizing coordination between water and agriculture. Now they have meetings, joint meetings of the ministers of water and ministers of agriculture. Now they have a high-level joint committee that looks at cross-cutting issues. They meet every year, the committee. They have endorsed an action plan. They endorsed the Cairo Declaration, which is a document that goes beyond water and agriculture. It looks at trade, looks at the connections between water and food security. So there is approved or endorsed guidelines for water allocation for agriculture, and this is work coming from the joint work of this high-level joint technical committee. So what we do is we support this high-level joint technical committee in reaching on cross-cutting issues to reach technical positions, policy positions, and then go to implement those positions on pilot projects. On partnership with others. In 2013, there was, in Amman, the Water Scarcity Initiative was launched, and there were 17 organizations that signed a pledge to work together, their willingness. It shows here the text in red. It says their willingness to work together, draw on collective knowledge and resources, and effectively, and an effective action-oriented and results-based regional partnership. So the initiative was really based on a strategic, a partnership strategic strategy. So we know that we cannot do this alone. We only have to work, the only way is to work in partnerships. So in this, we do now have operational 4 working clusters with all the partners engaged. Each water cluster is led or coordinated by 2 partners. We're trying to exchange information. We're trying to learn from one another, coordinate activities, etc. But the challenge is here in yellow, trying to go to joint programming. And that's what we're trying to do at the moment with all 6 partner organizations. This is what we do at the national level, the capacity building, the awareness, the trying to help countries better manage in a strategic manner water resources. And I've mentioned that we've done a lot of capacity building on water accounting, water productivity, the nexus, and on knowledge sharing and production. I'm not going to go through these, but these are some of the outcomes of the WEBS project. Final reflections and directions. Water scarcity is a growing impediment to sustainable development. Climate change is an added factor. We talk about climate change a lot. In this region, water scarcity is the base, a small layer of the impacts of climate change. So, and this small layer is important because it's changing the patterns. So we see more extreme events, flooding, as Dr. Al-Mohammed said, etc. So it's coming with new challenges, but it's an add-on. It's not the base. It's not the basic problem. The basic problem is water is not available in this region. Improvements are visible, but are not enough. As I've mentioned, water scarcity is a complex issue, and it really needs genuine collaboration between all. Political will is a very important element. We cannot really move and progress in this without a political will. Cross-sector coordination and policy coherence is no longer an option. It is a must. Water, agriculture, environment, they need to talk to each other. Timely technology transfer. Technology has a lot to offer, but it needs to be timely. There has to be an enabling environment on innovation so that innovation can really contribute to solutions. Technical capacity and evidence are very important for informed decision making, and innovative financing at the end of the day is very important to bridge the gap in financing the sector. I'll thank you for your attention. I'll stop here, and according to the program, I think we move now to the next presentation in the agenda. So I'll give the floor to my distinguished guests. You have the program. You have the program. Yes, so it gives me great pleasure to invite Minus. I think you're next.
He's not here, so I'll play his role.
Thank you very much to our co-chairs of this session, and thank you very much to FAO for organizing and inviting us to speak. My name is Magnus Andre. I'm a regional program manager. I'm based here in Amman. I think during the presentation I was giving a bit of a different role, but our regional director, Maria Celine, is here in the public. So I'm responsible for our work on environment, climate change, and natural resource management, and I've been asked today to talk a bit on financing, targeting water scarcity, and specifically from a donor perspective. So as a donor, SIDA has a focus on poverty reduction. And we want to work in ways and partnerships that are predictable, long-term, and catalytical. We have limited funding if you look at the financing need of the water sector in the region, but we have a specific focus that gives us a niche, I would say. Normally, when SIDA comes in as a funder, you know this is something that is targeting the most poor, the most vulnerable, looking to address specific challenges facing people experiencing poverty. So we have that specific focus. We have these results, but apart from that, our funding is quite flexible. So we can work with a multitude of actors, obviously governments, regional institutions, the UN system, but also with the private sector, with civil society and businesses. What we are interested in is the results. If the results can be achieved, our funding is usually flexible enough to provide support. And we're looking, as I said, for catalytic initiatives that can then be scaled up through other mechanisms. And our work here in the region is governed by our government strategy for development cooperation in the Middle East and North Africa. And as we've heard today, water scarcity, water is one of the major developmental challenges facing the region. It's essential for socioeconomic stability and development. So it's actually something that I would say affects all areas where we work. But I've listed two objectives that we have in our strategy that is most relevant for our support in the water sector. So we have environmentally and climate resilient sustainable development and sustainable use of natural resources. And we also have inclusive and sustainable economic development and trade. So for both these issues, specifically the first one, which is my focus area, we see that water scarcity is at the core of what we do. So we see that this is something that affects the most poor and the most vulnerable. If you want to build resilience, you have to tackle challenges related to water. It can be too little water, as in droughts, or it can be too much water, as we heard, from an increasing number of flooding, especially affecting vulnerable populations in coastal areas. We also see that water resources is essential for economic growth and to have a sustainable development given the population increase, given urbanization and expansion in the industrial sectors. We need to make better use of the water that we have, the resources available. And lastly, I would also like to underline the work that we are supporting in terms of protection and restoration of biodiversity and ecosystem services. Here, water is also essential. You basically can't have a preserved biodiversity without having access to water resources. So with that said, I would like to highlight some of the supports that we have in the water sector. And obviously, as a regional actor, we're supposed to support regional programs that have added value. SIDA also has bilateral programs in the region, and what we do should ideally support complex issues that require collaborations between states. So transboundary water management, I would say, is a given for us. It's a challenging area, but we do have a long-term support to EcoPeace, looking at the Jordan River to see how they can support improved management and increased investments that would make the most of that scarce resource. We're also working together with ECOWAS focusing on groundwater. That was also mentioned earlier. This is an extremely important resource, but it's a finite resource. We need to establish knowledge of aquifers and obviously good systems for managing this resource. And aquifers are also commonly transboundary, so there's a need for collaborations between countries in the region. And then we have a couple of specific support to what we call the nexus, water, energy, and food. And we see that these sectors are so interlinked that there is an increased demand for sharing information, for discussing specific ways of investing, because, for example, investments in desalination plants, which is common throughout the region, is obviously a way to increase the supply of water. But by increasing the supply of water through this manner, you would increase the energy demand. So there is a need for improved collaboration, improved planning, and improved policy coherence in this area. And as Mohammed mentioned, we have a long-standing support to FAO looking at water accounting, water efficiency, and productivity. Here, looking at water, supporting the water scarcity initiative, but specifically looking at the agricultural sector, which is the biggest user of water in the region, to see how, by understanding more which resources are available, how can you allocate it to the most productive use, and how can you make sure that the use is as efficient as possible. Here, we're hoping to continue working together with FAO and the partners under the Water Scarcity Initiative, seeing that this is something that is so important to the region. And just lastly on what we do, we have a specific country window for Yemen. Here we're looking more at access to services, and then there's scope to support water and sanitation more as a service sector. And as I said, I would be talking more about finance, and I'll just follow up a bit on what was said by previous speakers related to climate change. We see that this is obviously a process that is impacting the water sector by, changing precipitation patterns. You'll have a warmer, drier climate. By, translating its effects through the water availability, there's a great risk of impacting all sectors. This will likely have a significant impact on poverty in the region. So a huge challenge. It's not the only challenge. You have population growth, urbanization, and economic growth, but climate is significant. And we could see that at the last COP in Egypt, that water was high on the agenda. This is a priority globally, but definitely for the region. And I think it's likely that this focus will continue given the challenges that the GCC countries are facing. So COP28 will likely also have a strong focus on water. And here, through UNESCO, we're funding some vulnerability mappings, looking at how regional scenarios could play out affecting different sectors. Here, water sector is one of the sectors that we're looking at. I don't know if you're familiar, but it's the RICAR initiative. It's a collaboration between UNESCO and the Swedish Meteorological and Hydrological Institute. So framing this, I've been mostly focused on the challenges, but obviously climate finance comes with opportunities for the region. There is a lot of climate finance available at the global level, and we need to make sure that more of that funding is captured by the region, funding projects, adaptation projects and mitigation projects, but projects here in the region. And as you might know, Sweden is one of the biggest supporters to the Green Climate Fund, the Adaptation Fund, and the Global Environmental Facility. And my message here is that there is funding available, but more work has to be done in order to capture that more efficiently. Yeah? Here, I think project preparation is a big thing, and this is an area where SIDA would be happy to collaborate, to make sure that more flows addressing specifically adaptation, specifically poverty-related issues are captured from the global level and invested here in the region. So this source of funding, it's obviously small compared to the bigger needs of the sector, but if you look at adaptation needs, if you look at specific issues facing poor and vulnerable populations, this source of funding could be significant in my opinion. And continuing with some of the finance opportunity, the green transition, looking at efficiency, increasing productivity, harnessing innovation and digitalization is something that is quite high on the agenda. You have a lot of funding looking for quality projects to invest in. Circular economy is big. I think that as Mohammed mentioned, unconventional water, it presents valuable opportunities, and there's definitely a need to make sure that developments in the region, innovation in the region is presented in a way that can capture this type of, I would say, largely private sector finance. This would also be a way to reduce costs. Obviously, increasing efficiency and productivity would go a long way to handle a lot of the operational costs, which is a big part of the funding needs for the water sector. And this brings us to partnerships. I already mentioned that the need to work more across sectors. We feel that the water, energy, food nexus, that approach of multi-sectoral engagement is needed to address these complex projects. That this is something that is happening in a lot of countries in the region, but it's something that needs to grow further and to be followed up with policy development. As regional program, we think that regional opportunities, if it's transboundary issues or if it's more exchanging experiences and ideas, because a lot of the issues that individual countries are facing are common. So there's a lot to gain to collaborate. And as a regional program, we're here to support that kind of collaboration. Also, as previous speakers have mentioned, there's a need to price water correctly. Right now, it's generally underpriced in the region. There's a need to work with pricing instruments, especially seeing if more funding for the sectors could come from users, from consumers. This is obviously politically sensitive, but definitely a way forward and a must to have a sustainable funding for the sector. And I think working across the sector, maybe this is directed more to us as a donor. We need to be better at working with development banks, the private sector supporting public-private partnerships. There's a lot of both know-how and knowledge, as well as funding that could be accessed through that types of partnerships. And this brings us to the mobilization of funds. We feel that using more blended finance is a way to scale up activities. We can work together funding pilots, but we as a donor, we don't have the financial muscles to take it to scale. So here we need better cooperation with financial institutions. We have a lot of different instruments available. We can use guarantees to share risk. We could use grant funding to help and improve the quality of project preparations. We have a network that could facilitate contacts with institutional investors that are looking for this type of long-term investments, investing in infrastructure that is long-term, that would yield, I don't know, stable cash flows far in the future. But they obviously have a risk tolerance that they need to have certain criteria fulfilled in terms of quality and risk. So this is an area where we all could work together to improve. So just to sum up, regional opportunities and partnerships. There's a lot of low-hanging fruit. We should be better at working together. The region is facing a lot of similar challenges. There should be a focus on mobilizing and using climate finance more strategically. This is not a panacea, but definitely be an important part of catalytic funding and especially funding related to poverty reduction. As I just said, working more closely with mobilizing funding from the private sector, de-risking investments, making sure that institutional investors across the globe could invest here in MENA, because there is definitely a need, and I think it makes a lot of sense from an economic perspective. And then the last point is how to implement policy reforms, how to price water correctly, how to work on allocation, trying to increase allocation to more productive sectors, obviously safeguarding the most poor and the most vulnerable in the region. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Magnus, for this very interesting and informative presentation. Now for the sake of time, we move to our next speaker, Mr. Ketka Goyol. He is the Chief of Water, Sanitation and Hygiene at UNICEF Regional Office here in Amman. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Yeah, well done. Thank you. Your Excellency, colleagues, it's really a great pleasure to be here this morning to speak on this important topic of water scarcity. This, as we have heard, is something that is a big challenge of our times. And it needs, therefore, concerted efforts by all stakeholders to make it something that we can cope with, to deal with the negative impacts of it. So quickly, my presentation is on the topic of how do we accelerate interventions that will enable us cope with the challenge of water scarcity, so that we meet up the SDG targets, the Sustainable Development Goals. My topic is strictly looking at drinking water, but of course we have heard about how it is interlinked with all the other uses of water, and we need therefore to balance all of this. In terms of the Middle East and North Africa region for UNICEF, this is what it looks like on the map in terms of the geography. But certainly, we know that issues of transboundary interlinkages will have to be considered as we talk about some of these things that affect us. In terms of the Sustainable Development Goals, I'm sure we are all aware of what the different steps are in terms of safely managed water, which is the ultimate level of service where people have access to water within their homes. Now, if we look at these levels of service, there's what is called the basic service level, where people can access water from distances of up to 500 meters from their homes. So if we look at that in the MENA region, it looks fairly good. It looks covered. However, if we go up to the next step, which is the safely managed water available when it's needed and within the home state, we see that the map has changed. And that is because the service level is not up to that level yet. Why? Why is that so? Now the issue of water stress comes in. Why are we talking about water scarcity? It's all because we know that the amount of water available does not meet what we are taking for our uses. So then the issue of scarcity comes in. And this map is clearly showing us where the reddish colors are, areas where the water issues are becoming quite critical, and down to the others that are a bit bluish in color where there is no stress. Again, from the physical geography we talked about, we are in these areas where the situation is really critical, and we therefore need to take steps. And now the level of water scarcity or water stress, as defined by our colleagues in FAO, is what it is as demonstrated here. And we can see that for us in North Africa and Western Asia is quite high, is significant, and therefore it's an issue of concern for all of us as stakeholders. Moving on, how much water do we get as fresh water, renewable fresh water? Again, the map there is showing us that where there is no stress is where it goes beyond 1,700 cubic meters. However, anything that then goes down below that, it becomes stress, and there's even scarcity and absolute scarcity. When we look at the coloring on our map, again, we see that our region is within that area where there is stress, where there is scarcity, and absolute scarcity. Why is that? What are some of the driving factors? And I think we cannot shy away from the fact that climate change is having an impact. And that drives from the fact that there is temperature increases. And why is that? We all go back to the issues of emissions and the global warming that is coming up. So then we now begin to see that we are highly impacted by these issues of climate change. Next is the issue of precipitation. Amount of rainfall. Again, as we saw, because of the lack of precipitation, lack of fresh water, renewable fresh water, it is because of the changes in the patterns of precipitation. Again, as we can see over time, we are getting to those places of concern. Hence, there is need, therefore, for us to really take very concrete steps in trying to solve some of these issues. Now, why are we also being looked at as an area of concern is because of rate of population change. The dark areas And the coloring, again, is showing us why. We are increasingly seeing population increases that will then require water and would require, therefore, higher levels of services as we move towards the SDGs. Therefore, as I said, we have got within UNICEF what we call the accelerator on climate change and water scarcity. What can we do to accelerate improved access to water as a result of this? And the key areas that we are focusing on is safe and affordable drinking water services, climate resilient wash services, and communities that are resilient to these changes. The prevention of water scarcity crisis through early action, and then water cooperation for peace and stability. Again, we have had many discussions this morning about the need to really make sure that there is water cooperation for peace and economic development. All of these initiatives are what we call water security for all within UNICEF. And there are so many publications that exist that you can access online, free access actually, that you can see the details of what it means when we talk about water security for all. Now, in terms of those accelerators that I talked about, within UNICEF, what we want to look at is to make sure that our internal planning processes really take into consideration these issues of climate change and water scarcity, making sure that whatever we do is based on data and information, based on the science that is available, and the need for the governments that we support, that we work with, to be involved. Next is the issue of the enabling environment, where the national adaptation plans, the nationally determined commitments are also things that are based with a focus on the child. What is that impact that these changes are having on our children, which are our future, so that we are able to incorporate them in these national documents? Make sure that we have the climate financing. There are many opportunities that exist. Are we drawing on them? Then the issue of the technical options that we undertake. How do we make sure that these services are resilient to these changes that are happening? And this we can only do if we look at the key issues that can overcome them. What about the youth? Again, we know that the demography of the populations in the region is such that we have very high young populations. Do we involve them in some of these actions? Do we hear their perspectives and their views as we develop these actions? We need to really start, as they say, catching them young, making sure that children in school are able to have the knowledge and awareness on climate change issues. We cannot do that on our own, but we have sister agencies like UNESCO that are supporting national governments with curriculum and all of that. How do we partner together to make sure that we have these services in? And then comes the issue of regional coordination. And this, we cannot thank our colleagues in FAO enough, because this is one of those initiatives that we're looking at. Let's collaborate. Let's put our heads together. As they say, two good heads are better than one. So if we come together and join efforts, we will be able to then come over some of these challenges that we face. Now, we've talked about some of those some of the initiatives I'm talking about. Then Mohammed had talked about the activities with the League of Arab States, and I think this is something that is really commendable, and we have to continue to strengthen it. Upstream enabling environment activities in terms of national policies, national strategies, making sure that they have the climate lens on it, and then the issue of developing climate rationales and concept notes for countries in the Middle East and North Africa to be able to access global funds that are available is really something that we should do. And then the rollout of the youth engagement initiatives. It's really critical for us to take on the perspectives of the youth and our young people in whatever initiatives we're putting forward. Again, this is just what I've talked about in terms of what each of these activities would entail if we are to move forward. Now, quickly to end, I want to look at recommendations on how to move forward if we are to overcome this challenge of water scarcity. One is to look at the issues of national policies and the regulatory systems that would be able to stress or to address water scarcity and climate change. Next is to make sure that the issues of water scarcity are included in the national adaptation plans and the nationally determined contributions that each country is developing. The next is to look at how, at the highest level possible, there would be an interministerial coordination groups between relevant stakeholder ministries, Ministry of Water and Environment, Ministry of Agriculture, and the rest. We need to engage civil society and local communities, especially with youth as agents of change. And secondly, and then most importantly, is to look at the issue of capacity development. Because again, it's one thing for us to say we want to do this, but do we have the skills and the capacities locally to be able to do that effectively? I will end by leaving us with this word that, as we all know, we all have the right to access to water. So we need to preserve that right. We need to preserve the human rights to water and sanitation, and that we can only do if we do not compromise other uses of the water, making sure that we are all balanced between all of them. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for this very informative presentation, stressing the issue of collaboration. Now we move, for the sake of time, to the next presentation, Professor Imad Karable. He is the professor in the University of Jordan on water management. It's yours. انت بس تيجي هو يشتغل خلص. تفضل. بس يا ريت الوقت علشان.
Okay, thank you. I would like to thank FAO, Secretary General, ISQA, and AQUA to bring these people together and to know each other, at least not through email with Hisham. Maybe you have seen the water allocation problem in the early of this session. They put 3 bottles for 7 persons. So when I want to drink, I don't think what the feeling of Dahab when I take his water in the front of him. So then the problem is solved. They bring for each one bottle. So in this is not in the real life. The problem is not much more complicated than bringing additional water resources for each person. This is the water allocation problem. So is how to manage. So if I take, for example, when I thinking how can I solve the problem with my neighbor or my colleague, so I think that I will fill his glass, then I will take the rest from the bottle directly as an approach to allocate this problem. So the idea in this case is how to allocate water in an efficient way that everyone is satisfied, reaching the objectives. So the water scarcity arises when water is not sufficient by quantity, quality, time, and location, and who has the right to use this water. So I don't need to talk more detailed about the definition of water allocation, but our idea is to allocate water that match in agricultural sector that in the line with the water strategy in Jordan. Allow me, the Secretary General, I quote from the draft national water strategy. I know that it's still not finally approved, but I set the goal, for example, is to reform irrigation practices by reducing the amount of fresh water used to irrigate a crop. There will be an intention to reallocate water between fresh water for municipal purpose, replaced with treated wastewater or blended water that matched with the quality standard. So there is some specific objectives to increase the use of non-conventional water, reduce water losses in irrigation, maximize use of reclaimed water for agriculture, and also eliminate over abstraction of the groundwater. So the allocation is in the line of national water strategy. So this is the goal in the irrigated agriculture. The approach is to improve integration with the resource planning, improve efficiency, and also to more committed of reclaimed wastewater or reclaimed water qualities and equalities, and cooperation with main stakeholder. So I don't know to go detailed about the problem in the Jordan Valley with the water flows from in Yarmouk River and Tiberia, and also mixing it with the treated wastewater from King Talal Dam. This is the area is used or chosen for as a pilot study is in the northern part, and in the northern part most of the crop are fully irrigated with drip irrigation. Most of them are citrus and other vegetable crops and banana. In the other side there is rain-fed agriculture. So the challenges in the Jordan Valley related to the water scarcity and annual reduction of the water available for use in agriculture, in addition to the population, climate change, economic growth. So there is a huge competition between agriculture, municipal, domestic, and industrial use, and in a way we need to match this mixing, giving the priority for drinking, then industry, then agriculture. So the challenge in that area is increasing the gap between demand and supply, decreasing renewable water resources, climate change and more frequent drought, a high capital cost for a new water project, high electricity cost, and also high non-revenue water. So there is some, the pilot area selected in the northern Jordan Valley near Wadi al-Arab Dam. They have some special characteristics, and the current water allocation is given by water quota to the farmer according to the crop type, but there is a reduction of 30% of the eligible water quota. So there is blaming from the farmer that the water is not more sufficient for crops. They adopt many strategies to be adaptation strategies by farmer, either reduction of the cultivated area, more efficient in irrigation, other practices that are to stress baths or to take the water illegal way, drilling more well. So this is the main characteristics of the area. So we can summarize the key problem as mentioned by farmer, from the farmer perspective: a reliable water supply in both quantity and quality, lack of proper planning for the future irrigation system because it's stochastic and water quantity availability is determined by weather and other precipitation, lack of proper management of the irrigation system. This means high losses and lack of inefficiency. Also, they blame that the GVA staff is inefficient in water distribution to support farmer. This is a claim by the farmer. And also there is a competition between farmers themselves, which lead bad practices and illegal connection. So to solve the problem, we need to be sufficient quantity, proper quality, appropriate price, place, and appropriate time. So traditionally, the GVA play a dominant role in the water allocation in the Jordan Valley, and there is insufficient use and poor cost recovery, as mentioned previously by the Secretary General. So the main objectives of this exercise or this project is to demonstrate optimal water allocation system that can be used to allocate scarce water resources among consuming activities, and this is water allocation can be used as a decision support system, suggesting to the planner and decision maker the cropping pattern that likely to be more optimal under various conditions of what-if scenarios. What if there is an increase of the demand of some crop? What if there is a decrease in water supply? What if there is an increase of the price of water? What if there is allocation between consuming activities and between water crops? So the aim is to identifying a realistic water allocation that can be politically visible way for improving water efficiency, productivity, and sustainability among farmers. So just a few minutes. So for water allocation, we know that water consumption rely on several factors: technology, water production technology, irrigation technology, water availability, dominant cropping pattern, weather condition, and suitable land for cultivation. So the ultimate goal is to model how to maximize economic efficiency. The objective function may be yield, the objective function may be gross margin, profitability of the farmer, or the some specific quantities of strategic crop. So the objectives or specific objectives is to provide a decision maker with a support tool for planning the future agriculture under various conditions of water quantity, quality, and timing, and price of water. So that we can more specific for the selected area is to reduce the competition between domestic and irrigation, decrease the cost of energy, protecting river and environment, and increase share of farmer in the reclaimed water resources. This is the main challenges in the area. Has been mentioned is the insufficiency. So the water allocation we propose to base on the net irrigation crop requirement rather than a given quota to the farmers. So the pilot area is in the northern Jordan Valley with about 28,000 dunum, with about 750 farms as a pilot area. In this area that have been chosen, scaled up to more specific below Wadi al-Arab Dam, 3 development area in the stage office number 7 with about 750 farms and more specific data. And we can note that in this figure that most of the farmer, they have a pool in the farm to store water before the irrigation. In our neighbors, the water are received by pumping continuously. So if we can succeed in this pilot area to provide farmer water with upon request, upon the demand, according to crop water requirement, so the farmer don't need to dig a pool to conserve or to store water until the time of irrigation, so we can save the land and also the water evaporation and water losses. So this is the graph show the gross irrigation water demand and net irrigation water demand and water supply. There is a gap, or in the early of the season, the more water available than the demand, but during summer there is the demand is much more than the water supply, and there is the difference between gross irrigation water demand and net water demand is the efficiency. So if we can play or improve the efficiency, we can close the gap between water supply and water demand. And this is the current water allocation in the area, in the pilot area. Most of the demand between May and October, most in July and August, with about 20%. So this is what is called, just 1 minute. This is show the water demand based on the water quota, and there is what is called inefficiency or inequity of water distribution between farmer. Different farmer have different allocated water metric cubic per dunum per year. So this is the main activity that we are going to conduct. More investigation in the pilot area, reviewing laws, stakeholder participation, and also collecting data for water allocation, small investment and physical intervention, and implementing the water allocation plan with involvement of a stakeholder, and also putting and monitoring and reporting and indicator for indicator for progress. So thank you for listening.
Shukran. Sorry. Thank you, Dr. Imad. I must say that this is within a project. Actually, this is happening. This exercise is being done to apply the guidelines on water allocation for agriculture, which has been endorsed by the Joint Ministerial Council of Water and Agriculture. They called for countries interested to do a pilot, and Jordan is one of 4 cases. So we've listened to the first case, and now we will listen to the case from Tunisia to improve water allocation systems for agriculture. بس رجاء أسرع دكتور، حاول قدر الإمكان. لا ما هو لا لا ليش بدك تسكر؟ احنا عاملينها استنى
في البداية أشكر كل عفوا في البداية أشكر كل المنظمين وإتاحة الفرصة لي لأن أقدم التجربة التونسية. واسمحوا لي أن أتكلم باللغة العربية لكن المداخلة بريزنتيشن باللغة الإنجليزية. في هذه المداخلة سأقدم مشروع تجريبي حول الحصاصة المياه بتونس. لكن قبل أن أقدم هذا المشروع سأعطي بإيجاز الوضع المائي بتونس. رغم صغر حجم المساحة بتاع تونس هناك اختلاف كبير بين التساقطات المائية في أقصى الشمال وأقصى الجنوب. 1500 ملم في أقصى الشمال وأقل من 100 ملم في الجنوب. الموارد المائية المتاحة والمعبأة حاليا في حدود 90%، وهي في حدود 4 مليارات و200 مليون متر مكعب موزعة بين المياه السطحية والمياه الجوفية. لكن ثلث هذه المياه تفوق ملوحتها أكثر من 3 جرامات في اللتر. منذ بداية الاستقلال هناك الدولة قامت ببنية تحتية لا بأس بها واستثمرت كثيرا في القطاع المياه. حاليا قرابة 37 سد، والأربع الأحمر هم سدود في طور الإنجاز، وهناك بعض السدود الصغرى مبرمجة 6 واحد. لكن الخط الأحمر هو يجمع تقريبا واردات 13 سد، وهو بايب نحو الوسط والجنوب نحو صفاقس. يعني القطرة المياه التي تسقط في أقصى الشمال تحول إلى الجنوب أكثر من 400 كيلومتر. وهذا البنية التحتية جعلت من تونس تقريبا في حالة طيبة في السنوات الماضية. لكن أمام التغيرات المناخية في تونس كنا نتكيف مع حالات جفاف مدة 3 سنوات. الفترة الأخيرة تقريبا 6 سنوات أو 7 سنوات متتالية صارت الوضعية جد حرجة. وبالتالي تم الاعتماد الحصحصة على مستوى منظومات المائية. إذا كان نقسموا هذه الموارد المائية الجوفية والسطحية يمكن نقسمها إلى 3. بالنسبة للمياه الجوفية أكثرها متواجدة في الوسط والجنوب، وبالنسبة للسدود كما رأيتم كل السدود تقريبا متواجدة بالشمال. المنظومات السدود هناك 3 منظومات: منظومة سيدي سالم، والخط نقل المياه من الشمال يقع إدماجهم على مستوى تونس، ومن هناك إلى نحو الوطن القبلي نابل وسوسة وصفاقس. المنظومة الثانية هي منظومة بوهرتمة وملاق في منطقة جندوبة. ومنطقة جندوبة هي من أكثر المناطق فيها المياه، ومنظومة نبهانة التي سنتناولها في الدرس فيما بعد. بقية السدود، هناك سدود مخصصة كاملا للمياه الشرب، وهناك سدود أخرى للمياه الري. هذه البنية التحتية مكنت تونس من تزويد المناطق الحضرية بنسبة 100%، والمناطق الريفية مياه الشرب بنسبة 95%. كما تم تهيئة تقريبا 445 ألف إكتار من المناطق السقوية، وأعتقد هذا الحد الأقصى من المناطق السقوية، والتي تمثل تقريبا 8% من جملة 5 ملايين قابلة للزراعة. لكن منذ بداية التسعينات تقريبا، من بداية 95 اعتمدت تونس البرنامج الوطني للاقتصاد في المياه، وهو برنامج ناجح إلى حد ما، وربما بعض الدول الأخرى استفادت من هذا البرنامج. البرنامج يعتمد أساسا على إدخال طرق الري المقتصدة للمياه، وكانت في 95 نسبة تجهيز المناطق السقوية بحدود 37%، حاليا تجاوزت 94%. للتذكير، تونس الآن عندها دراسة استراتيجية لمجال المياه في أفق 2050، وهي في مراحلها الأخيرة، وتعتمد أساسا على بناء خطة لمجابهة التحديات المستقبلية. بالنسبة للمنظومة نبهانة، منظومة نبهانة هو سد بمنطقة القيروان، محافظة القيروان، وهناك أنابيب من السد نحو الأربع محافظات، هي سوسة والمنسير والمهدية. المنسير وسوسة هي منطقة سياحية. منسير تعتمد كذلك الفلاحة نتاعها مركز على البيوت المحمية، وتزود تأمن السوق المحلية خاصة في فصل الشتاء من الخضر. بالنسبة للسد، السد يزود تقريبا 30 منطقة سقوية، إضافة إلى تخصيص قرابة 6 أو 5 مليون متر مكعب في فصل الصيف لضمان تأمين احتياجات الشركة الوطنية لاستغلال وتوزيع المياه المكلفة بمياه الشرب، خاصة في فصل الصيف باعتبار الموسم السياحي. هذا الخط الثاني هو اللي حدثتكم عليه سابقا، من أقصى الشمال لأقصى الجنوب. يعني في فصل الشتاء نأخذ منه قرابة 2 مليون، وفي فصل الصيف نمد باعتباره خط تابع للشركة الوطنية لاستغلال وتوزيع المياه في اللحظة هذه، نمد هذا الخط ب5 مليون متر مكعب. هذه الشبكة، توزيع الشبكة من السد إلى ولاية المهدية. الواردات من 67 أو 68 تاريخ إنجاز السد تختلف من سنة إلى أخرى، ولكن نلاحظ في السنوات الأخيرة، 6 سنوات الأخيرة، نقص كبير مما أثر على المخزون بالسد، وأحدث معناها تنافس كبير بين المستغلين. الهدف من هذا المشروع النموذجي هو حصحصة المياه سواء بين المحافظات الأربعة أو بين المجامع المائية في القطاع الزراعي، وكذلك بين الشركة الوطنية لاستغلال وتوزيع المياه وبين المزارعين. وإن كانت الشركة الوطنية لاستغلال وتوزيع المياه عندها مشاريع أخرى لتحلية مياه البحر، ربما هذا يخفف الضغط على قطاع الري. هذا الهدف يرتكز على 4 عناصر، هي أولا تحسين دور المجامع المائية بالتكوين وإعادة ربما النصوص التشريعية في الغرض، وإرساء تعريفة مياه مقبولة بين الإدارة وبين المجامع، تحسين إدارة الطلب على المياه عبر إحداث تكنولوجيات حديثة سواء في تقنية الري أو داخل الحقل، الشفافية في توزيع المياه بين الأطراف أصحاب المصلحة، ولما لا البحث عن مصادر مياه أخرى، لا سيما أن مدينة سوسة تنتج يوميا 30 مليون متر مكعب سنويا 30 مليون متر مكعب من المياه المعالجة، وهناك مشروع دراسة تقريبا في نهايتها لإنجاز لاستغلال هذه المياه نحو ري غابة الزيتين المحاذي لمدينة سوسة. المتدخلين في هذا المشروع من المستغلين إلى الإدارة إلى عدة أطراف أخرى، منها وكالة نهوض بالاستثمارات الفلاحية المعنية بإعطاء المنح الدولة، هناك وكالة العقارية الفلاحية المعنية بالجانب العقاري، وزارة البيئة، وزارة الصحة، عدة أطراف داخل اتحاد الفلاحين، عدة أطراف، وتقريبا كل هذه الأطراف تساهم في تشكيل الخطة خطة هذا المشروع. إذن عدة اجتماعات سواء بين المسؤولين على مستوى المحافظات ال4 أو مع المزارعين لرسم خطة هذا المشروع. أهم العناصر لا أدخل بالتفاصيل، ولكن أهم العناصر الأساسية لهذه الخطة هي تحليل وتشخيص الوضع الحالي لمنظومة نبهانة قصد إنشاء قاعدة بيانات جغرافية، ولنا تجربة كبيرة منها في المنطقة هذه مع الجانب الألماني باستعمال الويب، باستعمال الووتر كونتينج، وإنشاء هذه القاعدة ربما تمكننا خاصة من الشفافية ومن العدالة في توزيع حصة المياه لكل المستعملين حسب الموارد المتاحة داخل حسب المخزون السد. هذه الخطة كما قلت تشريك كل أنا وقع رسمه بتشريك كل المنتفعين. العنصر الثالث هو تحسين تخصيص الموارد المائية المتاحة بالسد بعملية الإنصاف والشفافية سواء بين الأقاليم أو بين المجامع المائية أو ما بين المجامع المائية والمزارعين في حد ذاتهم. العمل على تحسين دور المجامع المائية سواء بالتكوين أو بخلق مناخ ثقة بين المزارعين والمجمع المائي، وبين المجمع المائي وبين الإدارة كذلك. اعتماد معناها انتداب مدير فني يعتني بالجوانب الفنية للمجمع، احترام الأجال في عقد مجالس الإدارات لهذه المجامع المائية إلى غير ذلك. ربما كذلك إعادة النظر في التشريعات القائمة. العنصر الخامس هو تحسين خدمات التزود بالمياه عبر إعادة تهيئة الشبكات المتهرئة. هناك بعض المجامع المائية لها شبكات تستحق إعادة التهيئة، وهذا يدخل ربما حسب التمويلات التي ستتوفر لهذا المشروع. سادسا، وأعتقد أن الأهم هو تحسين قيادة عملية الري عبر اعتماد أحدث التكنولوجيات الحديثة، وهذا لتحسين كفاءة شبكات الري من المنبع سواء كانت مياه جوفية أو مياه سطحية، من المنبع إلى النبتة، علما وأن أكثر الفواقد الموجودة هي داخل المستوى الحقل، فحتى بالطرق الري المقتصدة كما القطرة قطرة أو التنقيط كما تسمونه أنتم. رغم هذه التجهيزات هناك هدر كبير من المياه سواء عبر التسرب أو عبر التبخر. سابعا القيام بدورات تدريبية لفائدة العاملين بالقطاع سواء من مزارعين من مجامع مائية أو من فنيين مشرفين على المناطق السقوية المهيئة، وعملية إرشاد وتوسيع التجارب الناجحة بتبادل التجارب سواء داخل المنطقة في حد ذاتها أو داخل تونس. ما هي النتائج المرجوة من هذا المشروع؟ تحسين شبكات الري كما قلت من المنبع إلى مستوى النبتة. ثانيا تعميم استخدام تقنيات الري الحديثة، فلا مجال للري السطحي أو الري التقليدي. اعتماد العدادات الذكية، تركيز العدادات الذكية خاصة على مستوى استغلال المياه الجوفية في كل بئر. لابد من تركيز العداد الذكي، ويكون التحكم فيه عن بعد من طرف الإدارة. وإذا كان تم إفساده علما وأن تونس بصدد إعلان مجلة مياه حديثة تم مناقشتها مدة تقريبا 10 سنوات، وهي في طور الصدور ربما في الأشهر القادمة. بناء منصة وقاعدة معلومات محينة لجميع المستخدمين، والهدف منها ضمان الشفافية بين لتخصيص المياه حسب المخزون، تحسين دور المجامع المائية، وكما قلت إدخال التقنيات الحديثة والتكنولوجية منها محطات الرصد الجوي أو استعمال الأقمار الصناعية أو الأجهزة لقياس الرطوبة داخل التربة والتحكم فيها عن بعد. وشكرا جزيلا.
شكرا جزيلا للأخ الذهبي. And as you can see, these pilots are at the action plan stage. We will be implementing those in this year and hopefully learn from them to go and revisit the guidelines. So we redraft the guidelines according to the lessons learned from these pilots. We also have in Palestine and we have in Egypt also pilots being implemented. I know we're running late and lunch is being served, and the worst thing I can do is be between you and lunch. So if you have any questions, please, the panel is here. They will be available unless there is a comment or a question that cannot wait. Take two. Take two questions. My boss is saying that we need to take two. Can we have the microphone, please?
Yes, thank you very much. My name is Abdurrahman Sultan from EcoPeace Middle East. I would like to thank Your Excellency Al-Mohammed. You presented that the need to have new additional water resources for Jordan. In the meantime, we lose 50% of our water resources in non-revenue. So with bringing 300 million cubic meter through the national water carrier from Aqaba, and we expect to lose half of it in the network. So the priority here, shall we go first to fix the network and fix the water culture that we need to conserve water, as we are in one of the driest water countries, and it's a bit of pain for me to say that. But I would like to hear more that the government of Jordan is willing to move forward on a stringent methodology to cut the non-revenue water before we move into very expensive water resources in the future. Thank you.
I think, Ministry of Water and Irrigations, maybe by the middle of this month, they will launching, the new national water strategy. And also, the non-revenue water strategy has been launched already. We have to reduce the non-revenue each year 2%. This is our priority at the ministry, and also we have to maximize the non-conversion by applying water harvesting also, in some areas in Jordan.
Thank you. Another question? Final one.
Tafadhal.
Thanks very much for all the speakers, and I'm really here asking a question
Could you introduce yourself?
about. I am
yourself?
Khalil Absi from Jordan Valley Authority. To ask about the reliable solution for the climate change. We talk about the mitigation and adaptation, and I think from my point of view, all of these solution or suggested solution could serve at the short term, because we talk about declining the quantity of water and increasing the demand on the water. And we talk about, for example, reallocation from agriculture sector to other sector. And if we, for example, solve the drinking water sector by this resubstitution, will create a problem for the agriculture sector. And this will affect the food security at the medium run and the long run. I think all of these solutions, when we talk about the youth, for example, as my colleagues from the UNICEF focus on the youth and the institutionalization, and all of these solutions, I think it will not be served the solution of the radical solution of the climate change. Because if we assume that there is increasing demand and that water quantity will be reduced, and in the best scenario it will be the same, because we think all that the water quantity fall in the ground is the same each year. But sometimes the distribution is different from year to year. But also if we have this, for example, scenario, comparing with the increasing demand in the agriculture and the water as a result of the population growth, I think there is a big problem. When we talk about also the desalination and the recycling of water, all of these solutions, I think, will not be served forever. I hope that the scientists in the climate change could provide us with a very comprehensive solution, radical solution for the climate change, if we all agree that the climate change will be severe for all the people, for all the countries. Because yesterday, one of the colleagues from Saudi Arabia see that the benefits of the climate change in Saudi Arabia and other countries, because a lot of the quantity of water will receive on that. And here in Jordan, we have a bad effect of the climate change. So I think there will be an equilibrium situation at the end. In terms of water quantity, this country will be benefit and that country will be in a worse situation. What's your elaboration? My friend from the UNICEF, I would like to... Kit Kat, yes.
Okay. Thank you. And,
No, use them.
as you rightly said, I think
Yes.
Thank you. The key issue with climate change is, one, adaptation, to adapt, to cope with the impacts that we're seeing now. And then the one that we need to all focus on is mitigation. And that is where we cut the amount of emissions that we are putting into the atmosphere that is causing the global warming. And I think as we see, since pre-industrial times to now, the damage has been done. Okay? So for us to say we're going to stop climate change is not. We can only try to reduce it to make sure that the impact does not get to the levels that we have seen it going at exponential rates. Okay? So first is to adapt, cope with the impact as we see them now, and then to mitigate by cutting down on the emissions that we are doing. That would be the only solution. But that damage has been done already.
No, it's recovered.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
No, just to add some comments.
It's recovered.
I think, okay, life without problems mean nothing. Yes, I think we have. I think this is why we are here. Okay, because as you know, the climate change has become as a reality. Okay, it's something tangible. That's why we have to mitigate and adaptations. Okay, the climate change effect, for example, for our water resources or natural system. That's why we try, okay, to reduce the effect. By, for example, by adapting, okay, the nexus between, okay, sectoral. We cannot go back to the natural system or cannot go back to the steady state situations. You are right. But we have, okay, to live with the current situations. Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to thank all of you for hanging. I mean, we had people coming in and out, etc. But I'll give the final word to Nabil.
If you allow me to
the
close in one word, I wanted to thank the organizers for this event. Yani, of course, to thank His Excellency, the Secretary General of the Ministry of Water, as well as the cases that have been presented during this event. Certainly, this debate was very instructive. We had a lot of informations. We have seen also from the resource partners' perspective what is being offered, from the technical partners as well as all the stakeholders. Certainly, we have increase in population and we have increase in demand. And this is something that we need to cope with. Climate change started centuries ago, and it's not today that we are seeing the consequences only. However, we are still in this challenge, but what have been proposed, as I said, technology, water allocation, water demand, and all these matters, I think we need to cope with it and go more into the climate finance. Please do benefit from the climate finance that is being offered, but also at our level, at country level, to have more sustainable strategies in water management and get into that technology as well. I would like to thank you all for your attention. Shukran jazilan. Shukran.